So, hello and welcome to Radar Radio. We are here this week with Helen from UK Tech Fest. How are you doing, Helen?
Hello, yeah, I'm really good, thank you. And thank you so much for inviting me. Yeah, this is awesome. Can't wait to chat with you guys and talk all things sort of music and events and the industry, what's left of it right now.
Yeah, no
Um,
worries. Pleasure to have you on. I'm also
yeah.
joined this week with my usual co-hosts, Catherine
Hello.
and Joe.
Hello.
And yeah, obviously, there's been a lot going on in the world over the last 2 weeks, and we still really haven't had any sign of what's happening in the events industry, actually, which is kind of worrying. I'm seeing a lot of stuff about venues popping up now and potentially being unable to open. But before we get into the nitty gritty, how have you been, Helen, and what have you been doing during lockdown?
Yeah, I've actually been pretty good. Um, my lockdown kind of started pretty sort of chilled and relaxed. I was quite looking forward to just spending some time at home until I realised I wasn't going to get any help from the government, and I realised I needed to get another job. Um, so I'm now working at the Leeds Hospital with the NHS, just as like a cleaner housekeeper. It's the quickest job I've ever got, but I applied for like a COVID support role. So it's been really interesting, and it's actually been great to have a routine, just getting on the train every morning like I usually do. Um, which, yeah, it's definitely a weird situation, but one that yeah, I like to keep busy, so it kind of suits me quite well.
What does the support role entail?
It's simply just covering for people who have had to go off. If they're like vulnerable people who can't be in the hospital because of they've got underlying conditions. So there's quite a few people. I'm kind of covering different areas of the hospital and covering for their work. Yeah, so it's just essentially just a support to get extra people, extra staff on board.
Right. Okay. And how have you found your own well-being during all of this? Obviously, you said you like to keep busy, but I can imagine there's still a large change of pace and lifestyle with everything else that's going on. So how have
Yeah,
you kind of kept well and stayed on top of things?
yeah, definitely. It's really really weird, like the fact that it's we've gone through May and we've gone through June, and usually I would be sort of flat out right now, obviously preparing for Tech Fest, which is supposed to be in 3 weeks' time, um, and and even other events that I usually work on. I would have been working on a triathlon, I think last weekend. Obviously, it's meant to be download this weekend, so I'd have been there. Like it's really a really strange pace of life now because I just feel like I've got so much more time to do a lot of reading. I've got a lot of time to sort of just I don't know, enjoy myself at home, like watching loads of series. I've like tended to all my plants. I'm now growing sort of cauliflower and some broccoli in my little like garden terrace. Yeah, I just, I think I'm just keeping in touch with loads of friends, having kind of regular communication with them, having loads of like Zoom calls, but also just kind of occupying myself with little like I don't know, little kind of projects like new book or new series or just doing some stuff around the house that I haven't got around to doing in a while. So
Hmm.
yeah.
It's interesting because I think you're probably the second non-musician I think that we've had on here.
Okay.
So it's it's interesting how that answer varies uh, per musician, but yours has been quite similar to John from Euroblast that we had
Ah,
on
of course.
seven or
Yeah.
eight weeks ago.
I suppose musicians
Um,
are just going to be like playing away, recording, writing new music. I don't know.
well, yeah, I know you obviously. I mean, do you still play bass?
Yes and no. Like I haven't in a while, but that might be changing very soon. I might be joining a new band. I'm actually meeting them this week, and just it's a already formed band, and they need a bassist. So I'm thinking about it. I feel like I don't really need something else on my plate, but at the same time, I really really miss playing. So I do want to kind of get back into that. So maybe.
Nice.
Yeah.
If you can't disclose who it is, are you able to provide some insight on kind of genre and play style?
It's definitely metal, but it's not my usual tech metal. So if that, I feel like it's vague enough.
One of the things that we've enjoyed finding out about people in this series is how they got into the music industry. And I know that you're not exclusively in just the music industry of the entertainment sector,
Yeah.
because you work at the other festival that we talked about last time we met. Would you be able to talk us through how you got into the music side of things, though, and also what you do outside of that?
Yeah, of course. So actually, it's funny you should sort of ask this question, and because just before lockdown, I was invited to go to Southampton Solent University, and I was a guest lecturer, just kind of talking about exactly like how I got into the music industry, how I got into festivals and events, and it was really weird, kind of reflecting on what I've done because it doesn't feel like I've done that much. But then when I put it down on paper, I was like, oh, okay, actually, um, things have changed over the last 10 years. But as a bit of an oversight, kind of, I've always known I wanted to work in music. Um, just always love music, love live music. I kind of thought I'd be working in sort of music journalism because I love to write and love going to gigs. But it really all started when I moved to Leeds for university, and I I wanted to do a placement as part of my degree, and I was convinced I was going to go to London. I was going to work at like Roadrunner, get straight into the labels, and instead I found Northern Music Company, which is a music management company based just outside of Leeds. So I applied for an internship, got the internship, and worked with them for a whole year, and that just kind of catapulted me into the music industry. I got a job with them sort of after uni and worked with them a couple of years before sort of moving on to another event, sort of more events wise. This move was mainly because I wanted to sort of have more time to do Tech Fest because I'd kind of been doing that alongside university. Obviously, went along to the first one, just absolutely sort of fell in love with the event and wanted to help and wanted to get involved with it. And then obviously been with it ever since. So yeah, so after Northern Music, moved more into the events because I kind of felt like that's where my strengths lay. And I got involved with so Leeds City Council, who run an event called Light Night, which is a multi-arts and light festival. So a bit different from my usual kind of metal festivals. Yeah, and it's Light Night is just, yeah, it's a really cool event. It involves about sort of 60, 70 odd artists, installations across the city. Like sort of, we have projections, large scale building projections. We've got sort of dance pieces. We've got, oh goodness me, like sort of pop up arts. We've had inflatables on top of shopping centres, and I deal with all the kind of logistics, all the artist liaison and stuff, all the kind of making it happen, the health and safety, that kind of the behind the scenes bit to make it happen. Yeah, and then so since then I've worked with a company called 3D Productions. They are a sound lighting and staging company and provide equipment to sort of festivals and events in sort of Yorkshire as well as national. And then I freelance at other festivals. So I've been working this year, worked at the Worcester Light Festival, and that was their first ever light festival. And they kind of wanted a sort of parade manager who could help and had experience of light festivals. And then also Vegan Camp Out, which obviously has been cancelled this year, which is really sad. But that's a sort of 3-day vegan festival at the same place. Tech Fest is held at Newark Showground. So kind of came on board with my knowledge of the showground and went from there. So yeah, how does that give a kind of good overview?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's funny actually. You and I sort of walked a similar path. Like, I was an event manager and worked for some other festivals, etc. One thing we've been asking people, and I think we'll come back to TechFest in a bit, but for people who want to follow in your footsteps, want to get their foot in the door, how would you give them advice to, with getting experience and getting a foot in the door at a festival or an event?
Um, I do think it's got like it is hard, but the first thing I kind of did to get involved with festivals was actually steward with Oxfam, and it just enabled me to go to, I think I did like sort of, I can't remember, 5 or 6 festivals. I went on like Festival, Camp Festival, and a few others, all in one summer, and just really got a sense of like behind the scenes of what goes on at a festival. Another way is simply just reaching out and emailing and just trying your luck and just being like, hi, I want to come and help out. How can I help? What can I do? How can I get involved? And actually, one girl who contacted me about TechFest, she kind of emailed me like, oh yeah, can I come and help? And I kind of brushed her off, thinking like she was just a steward, but um, yeah, but she was really persistent, and she became my assistant, and yeah, she's a really close friend now as well. So I think just try and get to as many events as possible, learn as much as you can about the industry. Um, Obviously, I went to Southampton Solent, where they've got a festival management degree and a sort of events management degree, which is brilliant. I think the opportunities you get that I can see these students were getting were fantastic. Like they were working at Glastonbury, they were putting on their own events, like really getting down to the nitty gritty. Because I very much learned about events through kind of necessity and just getting thrown in, not really having any sort of formal training. But I think if you're passionate about it, you'll find ways, you'll find events, or just set up your own thing. Start small and then expand. And yeah, I think so. I think that's kind of how my advice I'd give. If that makes sense.
I definitely agree with you
Yeah,
that, yeah, being keen and the passion, what everyone in this industry has buckets of, isn't it?
yeah.
That's how the whole industry is sustained to a certain level.
Sorry, I was just gonna add as well. Like, I think it's having that attitude, that kind of positive attitude that has helped me a lot because events can be really hard, and they can when you're in in a field and it's pouring with rain, and you're in like a little cabin, but you've got to go out and sort something like some electrical issue or whatever, and it can be so draining, and it can just be so just like horrible, and and yeah, and the weather obviously affects things a lot, but then when you've got sort of emergency situations happening and it can be really stressful, and it's being able to sort of keep calm but also stay positive, have a really good morale, like sort of banter and morale with your team, and just be able to see that light at the end of the tunnel. And although you working on the event might be really hard work and you might not be enjoying it, or some of it, the satisfaction and the amazing event that you're putting on for the festival goers, well, for me, it makes it completely worth it because I can see like how amazing the event is, or what a good time they're having. And it's kind of like, yeah, if I wasn't doing my job as well as I'm doing it, then that wouldn't be happening.
Yeah, someone once said to me that event managers are like ducks, so they look really calm on the
Yeah,
surface, but underneath, yeah.
yeah, flapping, flapping away. Like, yeah, definitely.
Also, I was just wondering, listening to what you were saying, how did you specifically get into working with TechFest? What was your foot in the door there?
It was me being persistent and annoying, I think. I literally just sort of bugged Simon to get involved. I was just like, oh, I love it. The music's like exactly my music that I want to get involved with, or sort of that I love. I think it's a great a great thing, and how can I help? And that kind of just went from there. Yeah, I started sort of managing the stewards, and then Simon moved the show TechFest to the showground, Newark Showground, and I kind of fell into my role of just doing all the sort of venue liaison and a lot of stuff with the council, so the SAG planning and just all the health and safety and kind of logistics side of things.
Definitely sat in a few SAG meetings. They can be very difficult, can't they? Do you want to explain what a
Yeah,
SAG meeting is?
they can. Oh yeah, of course. Sorry, a SAG meeting is a safety advisory group. So this is made up of members of the local council, also like the local authority that your event is in. So for mine, it's Newark and Sherwood District Council. And then it's also made up of the fire, police, medical, environmental health. There's usually a couple of other people there as well. And you just have to talk through your event plan and tell them what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and how you've met all their requirements and how it's safe and you've got enough medical provision. And highways, that's one that's always there. How you're not going to block the roads with all your traffic that you're going to bring. And and then they fire loads of questions at you. So it's like a really intense interview with like 10 people, but I'm pretty used to them now.
So obviously, so how long have you been involved with TechFest now?
So since I went to the first one in 2012, and I guess since 2013. So this year was meant to be the 9th overall. So I think 7. Yeah. God, my math, sorry. So yes, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Yeah. So that would be so about 7.
So what do you think the biggest change that you've witnessed is since your time at helping out behind the scenes?
I think we've really stepped up on the production, and we've really, like myself and Amanda, have really made an effort to meet the level of production that the bands that we're bringing in kind of expect. Because ultimately we're a small festival in comparison to sort of the big Bloodstocks and everything else in the UK, like the outdoor kind of side of things. And we wanted to make sure the artists have a really good time, and we give them like just a great sound system. They're going to sound great, and because like we're if you've been to TechFest before, you know we've got the hangars, which aren't the most acoustically friendly hangars, but we've got an excellent PA system that's actually provided by the other company I work for, 3D Productions. It's very very interweaved, but I'd say probably the production. We've really stepped it up from sort of 2014 when we were first at the showground to last year's 2019 festival.
I have to say a little shout out to Amanda, because when I was there with Heart of a Coward, when they headlined the Thursday 2 years ago, Amanda was brilliant from start to finish. Definitely still to this day one of the best advancing and everything I've had. So yeah, I was really impressed with that.
Oh, thank you. That's so good to hear. She works so hard on it, and she is absolutely fantastic. She's got a really, really good team that she's kind of built up, and people who sort of just were really dedicated to it. And yeah, her advancing and organisation levels rival mine. So and that's hard to do.
Yeah, and actually, the stage crew when we got there and everything, everyone's just so helpful. And obviously when we started doing our own event, you remember what people have done really well, say at TechFest or Euroblast, and for me it was definitely that being met by quite a lot of hands who all knew what they were doing, and suddenly all your gear's loaded in. And because how many times have you done a show where you're loading gear in yourself up 3 flights of stairs and it's just the worst. So really we're very impressed from the moment we got there.
Well, that's honestly fantastic to hear, because I'm not usually behind the stages during the event, but I do know the team, and I know how hard they work. And I'm obviously like normally held up in an office somewhere, but honestly, it's fantastic to hear that, because we really, really try hard to sort of give all bands, especially like obviously you guys were headliners, but we try to look after all bands exactly the same way, just because they're all fantastic and they all deserve that. So yeah.
Where do you see the future of TechFest going?
Oh, the future. I don't know. The future of the events industry. God. But the
Yeah.
future of TechFest. Yeah. Well, Showground has become its home, and I think the beauty of the Showground is that there's so much room for expansion. So for now, like obviously we've had to cancel, which is just it's been heartbreaking, but obviously it was the right thing to do. Obviously, I know you guys postponed, so I'm really hoping you guys will be able to go ahead in October. But yeah, I think we're going to concentrate on next year and then just sort of see where we go, and continue at the Showground, because I think it's just a really special place. People have really grown to love it, and the model that we've got is working really well.
So obviously you've had to push back to next year. How badly did lockdown and the threat of the virus affect sales from as far back as March? Like, were you noticing it straight away, or was it gradual?
Well, we'd had an announcement beginning of March, and so our tickets were selling really, really well. And then, yeah, they just started dropping off, and then it was like, yeah, no one's buying tickets. And I think I spoke to quite a few people across festivals, and everyone started being like, yeah, no one's buying tickets anymore. There's no more confidence that it's going to go ahead. And I had a few emails of people being like, well, what's happening? Like, what will you be doing? And it's just, it was what was so frustrating for me, that was so stressful at the beginning of lockdown, was that uncertainty of not knowing. Like, I did so many scenarios of certain bands having to cancel and having to rearrange the lineup, of having to change the way we do the whole event, of what measures we put in place to ensure people were kind of safe at the event. It was just, yeah, it was infuriating not having that solid kind of, right, we're banning events all summer, which I think Germany did, and other countries have done. And yeah, yeah, it really annoyed me. But I say, obviously the tickets had stopped selling, but at the same time I'd held back completely on sort of paying out and everything, like paying for expenses, paying for some flights and stuff. I just really held back, and I was really wary from even as far sort of as early as kind of February time. I just didn't like where it was going, and like seeing Italy and everything, and seeing what was happening in the rest of the world. It just, yeah, it's a really horrible time for the events
It was a
industry
really
right now.
weird situation, wasn't it? From our
Yeah,
point of view, yeah, we were exactly the same. We were watching it. Tickets just dropped off a cliff.
yeah,
They were going so well, and we were really excited and thought, oh, okay, this might be a little problem. Oh God, this is a huge problem.
yeah.
And yeah, we did push to October. Will October happen? I don't know. Might be like the rest of the industry and do 2021. We're just sadly waiting to
Yeah.
see what the state is at the moment.
Have you guys had sort of been thinking about like capacity plans and stuff? Because I've seen a few things coming out about venues planning how they can reduce capacity. Like, is that something you guys have thought of or thinking about?
Yeah, as someone that runs a venue as well,
Yeah, of course.
I've been talking to Music Venues Trust quite a lot because they're our trade body,
Yeah,
and the difference between 2 metre, 1 metre, and normality is so comprehensive in terms of practicality
of course.
and financial responsibility that they are amongst the most depressing video calls I've ever been involved in, and that is a small amount, but nonetheless, it's difficult to navigate how on earth that's going to
Yeah, I can
work.
imagine. Like, I just don't see. Yeah, yeah, I don't envy you, and I really hope that it can. Yeah, I really hope you guys can
But
go ahead, and I
obviously, we're
really hope
looking
venues can go
at
ahead. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Obviously, we're looking at it from an indoor point of view,
of course.
whereas
Yeah,
festivals in general, obviously, we're both with the AIF, and the festival body generally has been fantastic in terms of advice for all its members
100%,
and making
yeah.
sure that we're up to date with everything. Yeah, I've been really impressed with their attitude and how they've approached everything with
Definitely,
us.
it's really good to have kind of a support network for sort of events and festivals across the country, because we're all independent and we're all sort of willing to support each other, and they're having them as a kind of a body to lobby on our behalf and lobby government and talk to the right people, I guess, is fantastic.
Where was the kind of, I guess not turning point, but at what point did you suddenly realize that it wasn't going to happen this year? Like, what was the deciding factor or moment?
Oh gosh, I don't know if there was one really. I think it was more. I had a very emotional phone call with the venue, just because for them, obviously, as a venue, because TechFest is not in a field in the middle of nowhere or on a farm or something. It's at Newark Showground, which is a venue that runs events all year round, and for them, it's just been like they've had a meteor hit their calendar. They've had, I think July is their 5th month of events just being wiped, and I know the vegan festival was in August, and obviously that's cancelled as well for next, or postponed to next year. And so for them, they're having events cancelled in August, and it's just, my heart absolutely goes out to them, because they're relying on this income coming in from all these events to fund, I believe it's the Nottingham County Show, and they're a charity in themselves, so they've got jobs on the line, and it just makes me really sad to hear about it. And obviously for us, I think it was the realization that it was the UK's situation was getting worse and worse, and obviously our death rate was escalating, and we weren't having clear guidance from the government. It just was inching closer, and when we got to sort of March, Amanda would have been thinking about advancing, and then April, it just, I don't think there was a specific moment, but it was a kind of snowball effect from sort of mid-March, I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say it was a similar thing with us in terms of realising that, as you say, at the moment we'd be in the middle of planning everything.
Yeah.
And when you look at where we are now, there's no way we'd be able to have international flights coming in currently.
Precisely, yeah.
Without a 14-day quarantine, for example. So obviously that is completely impractical for getting the international artists in that were headlining.
Yeah, it's just, I hate
yes,
it.
It was a bit of a gradual realisation.
Yeah, I know, and I think it's that kind of, I don't know. I think I was in a bit of a kind of false sense of security and thinking like it would all be okay. We just have like extra hand washing facilities, and and also I think as well, like the attitude in the UK was it wasn't going to be that bad, and I had conversations at the beginning of March being like, oh well, the festival industry is a resilient industry, we'll get through it, we'll be fine. And I don't know, it's just been, obviously no one's ever seen anything like this pandemic, and it will be really interesting to see how it evolves for the rest of the year, and of course into next year, because that is a kind of worry at the back of my mind, like, are festivals still going to be able to happen next year? I say it's a worry, it's like a really small kind of like worst case scenario. I'm pretty confident from what I've heard, and obviously the information from AIF, that 2021 will be full festival season. But it's one of those scenarios that from like health and safety and risk analysis point of view, I have to look at absolutely everything. And that is the worst.
I really don't mean to bum everyone out a bit more, but next year we'll also have Brexit to contend
God,
with.
I know that too. Like, I think I was talking to a friend last night, and it was just like, what is 2020 New Year's? I just can't, like, I can't believe like we're going into Brexit as well as having on the back of this pandemic. Well, hopefully it'll be on the back of this pandemic, and obviously all the protests that have been happening and all the sort of positives that have been coming out of 2020. Like, it's just, it's been a year and it's only June, so yeah.
It's so weird that we've all to an extent been living it as well, just from our living rooms, because no one's been allowed to go anywhere unless you're a key worker,
Yeah.
and so everyone's been so vocal online, for better or for worse, and I don't know. Time seems actually to have gone a lot quicker than I thought it would. I can't actually believe how quickly lockdown's gone. I guess we're keeping
Yeah.
ourselves busy. We're all events people, so we're doing Plan B, Plan C, Plan D.
Yeah.
But
And the rest, yeah. I think that for people who've been sort of furloughed, like I've got a couple of friends who they're just quite struggling because they've just got nothing to do, and they've also been in limbo, in the sense that they don't know when they're going to be going back to work. So I've got a couple of friends who work with airlines, and then also, yeah, or in this sort of airline travel, sorry, industry, not hospitality. So airlines and travel industry, and they might go back to work next week, they might go back to work next month, they don't have a fixed date, and that for me would be really frustrating, and not being able to not being able to sort of focus on something and have that date in mind, of when I'd be working again. So I think obviously becoming a key worker in this pandemic has really helped me, because it's just given me that routine, and it feels quite normal at the hospital, because apart from the fact that we're all wearing PPE, it's all the staff are there. There's a few less visitors, but obviously all the patients are there, and it's busy, sort of business as usual there.
What do you think? What do you think will happen in relation to events for the rest of the year? Do you think? I mean, obviously, if you're working for local government, do you have any insight into things potentially looking to open back up, or do you think 2021 is the one?
Well, sort of working for local government, that's kind of on a contract basis. So I'm not currently working with them, so unfortunately don't have any insight from their kind of point of view. But I think October and November will be, I hope will be back to normal, or back to sort of almost normal. Like I've got work booked in for November that was rescheduled for May, so I'm really hoping that will go ahead. And that was working with Leeds International Festival and Compass Festival in Leeds. And the project I was working on is a sort of 4-day, I think we've got 6 performances of a projection mapping 3-course meal, which there's an artist who talks about food waste and where our food comes from. So it's a really interesting, really arty kind of project, and it was really excited to sort of bring it, to be involved with it and make it happen. But hoping that's going to take place in November. I think it's really hard to gauge and really hard to guess. I think that's my hope. But then I'm also hearing on the grapevine from like sort of music industry wise side that it's just there's not going to be sort of any tours or anything in the autumn. It's all going to be pushed into 2021.
Yeah, that's exactly what
Yeah.
what I've heard as well, and I'm really hoping that's not the case, because I think I've maybe been to 5
Yeah.
shows this year.
It's so
maybe
frustrating,
5.
isn't it? And what really annoyed me is at the beginning of 2020, I was like, "God, I really don't go to enough gigs. Like, this is going to be my year. I'm going to go to all the gigs." And like, I feel like I jinxed it or something because it's just ridiculous. My calendar was so full, and I was so looking forward to seeing loads and loads of bands in Leeds and over in Manchester, and I planned out like March, April, May. And yeah, none of them happened.
Yeah, and then you got all the poor bands who were in the middle of releasing an album, like Bleed from Within. They dropped a great album,
Yeah.
but they had to do it a couple of weeks into lockdown, and so there's no tour. The Scratch did it as well. Actually, they were really cool, weren't they? And brought theirs forward
Okay.
to give everyone a present in lockdown, which I thought was quite a nice touch.
Well, speaking of bands releasing albums in lockdown, because 2 bands I used to work with, Catatonia and Paradise Lost, so not very tech metally, but 2 excellent bands. They both released new albums during lockdown, and I believe they've been some of the most successful, or they're being one of the most successful albums for those bands. Catatonia did a live show from their studio, their Swedish band, and it was fantastic, and it was an amazing show from my living room. But I think bands are being really creative, and I love that, and I think people are more likely to support them during this lockdown because they can't tour. So I don't think it's a bad time to release an album, because everyone's at home ready to listen to it, if you're a fan. And yeah, well, those two bands are the ones I know, and they've had a really good time with their releases.
So, on a more positive note, we usually ask guests about funny tour stories they've had, and obviously you have been a touring musician previously. However, obviously, as this one's a little bit more events focused, I was wondering if you had any funny stories that you'd be able to share with us.
Oh, goodness.
That bring fond memories back from any festivals you've worked at.
Oh my goodness. I can only think of the bad ones now. I'm suddenly thinking of like all the emergency situations rather than like all the funny ones. Oh gosh. Let me think.
You just made my mind go to the worst. Once at a festival I worked at, a steward drank liquid ketamine, and
Oh my God.
in the words of the paramedic, had all the symptoms of death. That was probably one of the worst
Wow.
moments of my professional career.
I'm not surprised. Oh my God. Like, I think that's, yeah, speaking of kind of stories and like from a worse point of view, like those ones are the scariest, but those ones are the ones that really test you, and test your kind of ability to react to a situation. And yeah, luckily I haven't had to deal with that many of them, but the ones I have dealt with obviously have been absolutely fine, and we've dealt with them really swiftly. I really can't think of anything right now. I'm just suddenly like, my mind has gone completely blank.
Well, we put you on the spot a bit there.
Yeah,
so,
sorry. I'm just trying to think. Like, I've had such amazing times at festivals, and I love it. I think all my funny ones come from just like being at festivals. Like, I love going to Euroblast and just being able to get drunk and enjoying myself, and yeah, not having to worry about the stresses of of running running the event. Yeah, sorry, my mind has gone completely blank.
No, that's fine. I mean, what we would then move on to, which is another one on the spot, but a bit easier because you work for a festival, is what have you been listening to in lockdown? Have any obviously Catatonia, but has anyone really caught your ear?
Oh gosh, well, yeah. So Catatonia and Paradise Lost, I've been really enjoying their new albums, and I'm a big fan of Loathe. I know their album came out a while before lockdown. I think they were one of my last shows that I actually saw before there were no more live shows, and they were fantastic. I saw them at the Parish in Huddersfield. Stupidly pushed myself forward straight to the front, and then got my drink kicked out of my hand. But you know, what can you do? I hadn't been to a show in a while, and I was annoyed that I couldn't see anything being 5'2". So I had that coming, but I then got a great view. The guy was very apologetic, so it's all good. But
I feel pretty bad that one of my last shows before lockdown would have been Loathe, but the weather was really bad, and I didn't want to risk trying to get to London.
Oh, no.
And now in hindsight, I think I should have gone that extra mile to go and watch Loathe. I'd kill to see Loathe tomorrow.
Yeah, completely. Like oh God, it was such a good show. I did have to leave slightly early because I had to get a train back, and they were played with a load of technical difficulties, which meant there was quite a few sort of delays between songs. But the new album is fantastic. The live show is fantastic. I can't rate them enough. They're one of my absolute favourite bands. Like, I saw them when we had them a couple of years ago at TechFest, and yeah, Radio came out of my ear. I was like, no one's interrupting me. This is a band that I can see will go far, and yeah, I think they're on the up. But other stuff I've been listening to, like I've got my usual sort of tech playlists on and bands like Between the Buried and Me and Carnival and things like that. But I also listen to sort of quite a lot of like electronic playlists. I find it really good to focus for work. I also find it really good to do for yoga and yeah, and just to kind of zone out to. I like a lot of chill stuff as well as my metal.
Yeah, I think that's really healthy, isn't it? I mean, if you
Mm.
look at my playlists, I've got all the lo-fi hip hop dance music from the 90s,
Yeah,
tons of new metal because I was definitely a new metal brat when I was younger.
weren't we all? It was great.
I had horrendous dyed black hair, spiked all the
Oh
way along,
gosh.
and I'm glad that we didn't have camera phones back then because there's very little evidence.
Yeah, I know. Feel sorry for the the kids of today growing up on Snapchat. Like, yeah.
So I was going to say, let's talk about, I guess, your your bass and your playing, your influences a little bit.
Okay. Oh goodness me, I haven't thought about this for or had this question asked in quite a while. But yeah, no, let's go for it. Where should we start?
Well, what gear are you using? Because I know you used to have some Ibanez
Yeah.
basses. They were
Oh
multi-scale as
gosh.
well, weren't they?
So I've sadly pretty much sold all but my first bass. So I've only got my 4 string left, um, which is an Ibanez SR 500, I believe. Oh my goodness. I've never really been a gear kind of nerd, like really into gear. For some reason, it just doesn't hugely interest me. Um, I love the playing aspect of things. I started sort of playing flute and piano, and then moved to bass just because I don't know, I got into metal. I loved the band All That Remains, and they had a female bass player. Have a female bass player. I'm not sure if she's still with the band, but and just like she was a huge influence on me, and I was just like, yes, that's what I want to do. I want to play in a metal band, and I want to be really badass playing bass. And yeah, so that's kind of what started it. But I've always had a sort of used a Hartkey setup, and I yeah, I loved my Fanfret Ibanez, and it was a 6 string one, just because Sam from the old guitarist in Hieroglyph just kept writing harder and harder stuff, and he was just like, yeah, you're gonna need another string for this. So he's kind of been the one who's pushed me sort of forward in my playing, and excuse me, and also in the basses that I've got or had even.
What so are you more digital, or are you more into more analog gear?
Oh goodness, there's a question. I'm gonna say more into analog gear. I've never, yeah, I honestly, like, I'm really, really bad with gear when it comes to things. Like, I kind of research what is the best thing to do, and or what is the best thing to get, and I'll go for it. And I tend to be kind of like creature of habit and not really change. Like, I've never got into the Axe effects, as you know, all the kind of digital stuff that's really popular in the tech scene. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, for me, it's just not one of the. You are sorry, that's you.
Blasphemy.
Yeah. Oh, blasphemy.
There's no blasphemy.
I know. I feel like I think the thing for me about live music, and especially being in a band, is being on stage, because it just gives there's such an energy, and I just get such a kind of rush of like adrenaline and feeling, and I love just being able to headbang and kind of zone out and just be in that moment. And that for me, like I never use really wrote much of the hieroglyph material either. I'm more of just a performance kind of basis. Like I'll learn the songs and play the music and just kind of support the band from a more of a kind of management admin kind of side of things, getting stuff done, organizing shows and driving everyone places. Yeah, and I'm not really kind of like that ashamed of it. Like, I know there's so many creative people, and for me it's just not really ever been my bag. So yeah.
One thing that I'd like to ask you, although in complete honesty, I'd also like not to
Okay.
ask you, but I think it's an interesting topic and one that we've talked about
Yeah.
briefly before anyway, but I'd be interested in a sort of more official capacity, because as far as I'm aware, no one was recording our conversations beforehand. How do you feel about the pressure or not pressure of being a woman in the music industry, and how does that affect you, or how does it not affect you?
Yes, women in music. I'm a huge sort of feminist, very, very like kind of I've got very strong views on the subject, and I'm very passionate about it, and I'm very, very passionate about sort of encouraging more women into music, because I just think it's incredibly important to have to have women, and to show how sort of creative they are, and how much they can bring to the table. For me personally, I've being in a bands before, I've always tried to be kind of one of the boys, like not dressing up, and maybe just trying to kind of tone down what I like. Oh God, it gets me really frustrated when I talk about it, because it's just I always try to fit in, to be one of like kind of like the guys, to get more respect, because it just felt like I wouldn't get it just by being me as a woman. Excuse me. I've had the kind of comments of like, oh, you're really good bassist for a girl, and like, oh, you're really good. Yeah, just those kind of comments, and it was so kind of demoralizing. But then at the same time, it made me more kind of adamant to be better. And I think that's why I really wanted to get into tech, because I know how hard it is. And I was like, I'm not just going to be a good bassist for a girl. I want to be a good bassist. And it just kind of lit a fire in me, and just drove me forward. I think the music industry is still kind of the boys' club. But I do see it changing. And over the last sort of 10 years or so that I've kind of been involved with the music industry, I think it has changed. I think there's a lot of powerful women who are sort of not taking any bullshit, and they're creating change, and they're creating opportunities for other women. Personally, I've had some amazing mentors. Vicky Langham, for example, at Northern Music Company. She's one of the artist managers there, and she's also one of my bestest friends. She has just been such a sort of inspiration to me, of how to kind of just how to be excellent at my job, how to not be kind of the pushover, how to like get that respect and keep that respect. So yeah, does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think it's something that I've been asked about
Yeah.
a lot, obviously, since my involvement with Radar. And I've run a venue for 12 years. I had before I started Radar, I mean. And it was never an issue, really, running the venue. And at one point, I had a female sound engineer, and the two of us would be, for example, in the main room, and we were the only two that would have dealt with all of the bands for Friday Night Gig, for example. And I got kind of used to watching a band arrive, walk around the building,
look for the man in charge,
past us, go and find the male caretaker, and then wait. We'd almost time them to come back to speak to us. And it's not that I didn't notice it, but there was an element of me thinking, oh, okay, well, that's their assumption. Hopefully this has corrected it, but it's not the end of the world, sort of thing. And then moving on to Radar, I think simply because it was a slightly more high profile in terms of what I was doing role within the music industry, there are two sides of it to some extent. Pretty much everybody that I spoke to at Radar who didn't know me thought that I worked for Joe and Ash, and in many ways I do, but in an official capacity we are all equal, and the amount of people that thought I was their secretary was quite a jolt to me, in terms of it just being
doesn't
an
surprise me, and
assumption.
it's annoying. It doesn't surprise me
to the extent to the extent that I think the worst one was a gentleman who directly read my lanyard, which said festival organizer, and asked me if I had borrowed it from Joe so that I could go and use
oh my god, I remember you telling me this. Outraged.
Which was one of my favourite and worst experiences in terms of sort of not knowing how to respond to that. But I found that odd. But then on the flip side, I'm the one that gets approached for press more often than not, out of the three of us. And I think that's probably because the press are trying to do their utmost to highlight the fact that we have a voice. But in an adverse way, I kind of think, well, there are two other people as well, and I prefer to share it equally, because I don't see myself as more important a voice than them, but I do appreciate that they're trying to redress what is a
I think it's important though that your voice gets heard, because I think as a woman who's prominent in the music industry, we have to be influencers for younger women and other women coming up, and if they see that, then they're going to be like, oh yeah, I could do that, that would be awesome. Like, I literally started playing bass because I saw another female bass player, and I hadn't actually, there's Smashing Pumpkins obviously have a female bass player, but like I can name about 5, like, like they're not common, and but it was actually seeing someone and seeing yourself kind of like reflected back, was just I think is just so important, and it really annoys me that guy was just like, oh, did you borrow that lanyard? Like, come on, it's just
I'm cringing thinking about it, just because he mentioned me. I mean, we always from the start made a point of saying, whenever our names were in writing, to always do it alphabetically. So at first it was Catherine and Joe, and then Ash joined. It was Ash, Catherine, and Joe, and I always felt that was really important, because then there's no hierarchy. It's just we're in alphabetical order.
That makes perfect sense. I think I've had especially in the bands and stuff, like it would always be like the female bassist, the female singer, and obviously in Hieroglyph we had Val as a singer and me as a bassist. So we had 2 girls, and we like people would joke that we had half the girls in the tech scene in the band. And unfortunately, there's hardly any. Well, there used to be hardly any women, especially at Tech Fest, but at tech gigs, but there's more and more now, and it's awesome. And they're not girlfriends, they're girls who have dragged their boyfriends because they love the music, and that's I just absolutely love, because I've always been mistaken for the girlfriend who isn't into the music but it's just coming along, and I wasn't even there with a boyfriend. I was just like, no, I'm here because I love the music. And I do think things are changing, and I think those kind of outdated, old-fashioned views are becoming less and less, and it's becoming commonplace to see women behind the sound desk or behind backstage, as a stage manager, as the organizer, etc. And long may it continue.
Actually, that ties into a point I was waiting patiently to make, because I've worked at the Boiler Room for quite a long time, and we've always really pushed to be quite an inclusive space. And with that, we always sort of sought out female sound engineers, because we kind of felt that sometimes they didn't get the break in other places. And the best sound engineers we've had in years, surprise, surprise, are the females we've had. And we've had guys come in who like grizzly old TMs and walk past Tanya, who is the best, shout out to Tanya, and then by the end of the night Tanya just absolutely wowed him and has him literally doing whatever she asks,
Yeah.
because she's on the Tom Meister course, which you have to have a physics qualification and also music qualifications. It's like blows my mind the stuff that she does. And I always made a point as well, when bands came in, I wouldn't just go up and sort of assume a guy was the tour manager. I'd just ask who is the
Yeah,
tour
I think that's
manager,
important.
because I've seen people embarrass themselves so badly.
But I think that's really important from a male perspective, that you do need to actively be aware that of what you're asking, or what you're judging, and or how you're judging for the people in front of you, and who you're making assumptions about. Because I just think it's more important, because you don't know who's who, especially if you've never met anyone, and I think it's so much, you're going to get a lot more respect from coming from a place of kind of just honesty and humbleness, of like, oh, who do I need to speak to, not just walking up to the nearest guy and being like, hey mate, like who do I need to, like, you must be the guy I need to talk to, because you're the one in charge. Like I've had one of my best friends, yeah, this story really annoys me, but she was there with her husband, who's not in the music industry, and someone literally spoke to him, and he was like, you need to speak to her, mate. And he just wouldn't, he just couldn't understand that he had to speak to her, and he just continued talking to her husband. And it was just like, well, right, I'm not in music, mate, like I'm in IT, you need to speak to her. Like, and it's just that, I think for some people, I guess they're just kind of old fashioned and don't want to acknowledge this, or don't want to change their views. But for a lot of people, things are changing, which I think is fantastic. And yeah, it will change.
Yeah, I think it's been reinforced with me through actually cringe-worthy embarrassment when I've been stood next to Catherine, or at the boardroom stood next to Dom. So I should say Dom is short for Dominique, and it's Dom's venue. She is the director, and people are talking to me stood next to one of those two, and I'm sort of looking at them like, you need to be saying this to them, while they're talking at me, like trying to make eyes, and just sort of die a little inside when that happens, because
I do find it a lot, because I am only 5'2", and I don't wear heels, and a lot of people are sort of over sort of 5'10", 6 foot, and a lot of people will literally just look over my head, and not intentionally, but if I'm stood with a guy who's 6 foot or something, they're on the same eye level, and I'm I'm a good foot lower, and I've had it a few times, so people have literally just spoken over my head, and I've just had to be like, hi, I'm down here, like, hello, I'm the one you need to be talking to right now. Yeah, but it's just, it is what it is, and things will be changing, and will change, and it's definitely getting better. There's been less and less of it over the last few years that I've experienced personally.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, it's I found it frustrating, but the overwhelming majority have been incredibly positive. And what you were saying about in terms of the next generation, I wasn't as bothered about it all until the girls that were working for us at the festival actually commented that they really appreciated having a female role model at the time to aspire to, which I don't necessarily feel comfortable in that position.
I know completely what you mean. I don't either. Like when I went to this to be a guest lecturer, I was just like really, me? I'm not really a role model. I don't feel like I'm in that role. But I think it's the whole sort of mentoring and women supporting other women, and I've just been so lucky to find a lot of women that have just become kind of friends and essentially mentors. And I feel like I'm kind of getting to a point where I can pass that and become the mentor myself. And it's a weird sensation, but at the same time, I think it's just about sharing knowledge, sharing experience, and giving people legs up and just helping each other. Rather than tearing each other down, because I think there's been such kind of stereotypes about like sort of women in the music industry, like they're only there to sleep with a band or whatever, and they don't exist. Like it really frustrates me that we get pigeonholed, and there's so many assumptions about us. But it's going to change, and we need to just look to support each other rather than making life harder for each other. I think that's the same for everybody, and that's what I try to do for every industry and sort of every workplace that I'm in.
Well, that's a really positive outlook and way to end this podcast as we've just hit an hour. Thank you very much for your time today,
Yeah,
Helen.
it's
That
been
was
really great to
insightful.
chat, and like thank you again so much for having me and inviting me. I was quite surprised when you wanted to speak to me, because I similarly don't, as Catherine's kind of said, don't really see myself as a sort of a really pivotal person in the music industry, but it's nice to chat to you guys and just talk events and music.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people who work hard behind the scenes on things that don't necessarily get the credit or the limelight that they might deserve. So I think it's important that the hardworking people are also represented as well.
Yeah, well, thank you. Love it.
That's all right. Well, that's a goodbye from myself and a goodbye from Catherine.
Goodbye.
And goodbye from Joe.
See you later.
Cheers, guys.